Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham, Jaya Radhe Sham. Nitya Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gora Hari Bol. Nitya Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gora Hari Bol. Jaya Radha Kalachandji, Radha Kalachandji, Radhe. Jaya Radha Kalachandji, Radha Kalachandji, Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladev, Jaya Subhadra. Nitya Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gora Hari Bol. Nitya Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gora Hari Bol. Jaya Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Go Premanande. Jayam Vishnu Pad Pramang's Pravachikacharya Stotri Simal Savang Grace Sabai Charanarvan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnu Pad Pramang's Pravachikacharya Stotri Simal Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki. Anantikoti Vaishnavrinda Ki. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakanda Radhakanda Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Navrit Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Tulsi Maharani Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Shri Shri Radhakalachandji Ki Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ki, Shri Shri Gaunitai Ki, Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON movement Ki, Tamal Krishna Maharaj Ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki, Go Premanandi. All glories to the Samma devotees. All glories to the Samma devotees. All glories to the Samma devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Hare Krishna. Just want to welcome again all of our guests here from out of town. Thank you, Adi Karta Prabhu, for the wonderful Guru Puja. It's so nice to have you all here. Special welcome to Apurva Prabhu and Mother Kamalini and His Grace Mukundadata Prabhu and His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. Just give them all a big Haribo. Haribo. So now we'll have class by His Grace Mukundadata Prabhu. We're very grateful to have Prabhu here in Dallas visiting with us. He normally resides in Sri Vrindavan Dham. And he's spent quite a bit of time in Dallas many years ago, serving here. And he's been here throughout the years, and we're so grateful for any time he comes to visit. He is a wonderful disciple of Srila Prabhupada and a brilliant Sanskrit scholar and knows our philosophy very well. And so we're so grateful to have you here in town, Prabhu. And we pray to have many more classes and kirtans with you while you're here. Let's give Mukundadata Prabhu a big Haribo. Haribo. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. I feel like the proverbial duck in the Society of Swans. All of you kindly give me some blessings that I can say something useful. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadam Vandeham Shri Gurohom Shri Uttaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamo Bhagate Dhanamajnanadibhi saha Kalaunashtadrishamesha Puranarko Dhunodita. Okay, we've been asked to speak on Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 20, Lord Vishnu's appearance in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Prithu. And we're instructed to cover texts 1 through 16, which is a bit of a tall order, but I will try. I'm just going to recite the Sanskrit because we have to save time. Maitreya uvacha bhagavan api vaikuntha sakam maghavata vibho yajñer yajñapatishtushto yajñabhuktam abhashata. The great sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, being very much satisfied by the performance of 99 horse sacrifices, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, appeared on the scene. Accompanying him was King Indra. Lord Vishnu then began to speak. Shri Bhagavan uvacha eshate karshid bhangam hayamedha shatasya kshamapayata atmanam amushyak shantumarhasi. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, My dear King Prithu, Indra, the King of Heaven, has disturbed your execution of 100 horse sacrifices. Now he has come with me to be forgiven by you. Therefore, excuse him. There's a purport here by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the word Atmanam is very significant. It is a custom among yogis and jnanis to address one another, or even an ordinary man, as one's self. For a transcendentalist never accepts a living being to be the body. Only the individual self is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since the individual self is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the self and the super self are qualitatively non-different. As the next verse will explain, the body is only a superficial covering, and consequently an advanced transcendentalist will not make a distinction between oneself and another. Srutiya sadhavo loke naradeva narottamaha nabidruhyanti bhutebhyo yarhi natma kalevanam. O King, one who is advanced in intelligence and eager to perform welfare activities for others is considered best among human beings. An advanced human being is never malicious to others. Those with advanced intelligence are always conscious that this material body is different from the soul. Purport. In daily life, we find that when a madman commits murder, he is excused even by a high court judge. The idea is that a living entity is always pure because he's part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When he falls, into the clutches of the material energy, he becomes a victim of the three modes of material nature. Indeed, whatever he does under the influence of material nature. This is described in Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, text 14. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Anyone here conversant with chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita? Chapter 14. What does chapter 14 deal with? The three modes of material nature. And Prabhupada actually said it's the most important chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Why? Krishna concludes here in Bhagavad Gita, same Bhagavad Gita, that there's nothing but these modes of material nature. When we see that, then we can actually begin to understand something about transcendence. Before we try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead's intimate personal pastimes, we have to understand the modes of nature. It's a lot less fun, but somebody has to do it. Who has to do it? We have to do it. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead now. Purushaya di muhyanti twadrisha deva mayaya shrama eva param jato dirghaya vriddha sevaya. If a personality like you, who are so much advanced because of executing the instructions of the previous acharyas, is carried away by the influence of my material energy, then all your advancement may be considered simply a waste of time. Purport: in this verse, the word vriddha sevaya is very significant. Vriddha means old. In the Dharma Shastras, it's stated that if you have an assembly of advisors or someone that you consult, some kind of sabha, it has to be old people. Cannot work with young people. Something to consider. Perfect knowledge is acquired from the acharyas, or liberated souls. No one can be perfect in knowledge without being trained by the parampara system. Prithu Maharaj was completely trained in that line. Therefore, he did not deserve to be considered an ordinary man. An ordinary man who has only a conception of bodily existence is always bewildered by the modes of material nature. Have you noticed? I'm always bewildered. Anyway, so what is he saying here? Somebody like you, it's kind of similar to what Krishna told Arjuna in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, that kutastva kushmalamedam vishame samopastitam anaryajishtam asvargyam akirti karam Arjuna. That you're better than this, Arjuna. We are also better than this. Look what we're settling for. In the Briharanyaka Upanishad, I think, there's a statement that the sage Vamadev, once he realized, oh my God, I used to be the sun. Do you remember when you were the sun? Have you ever been the sun, Apurva? Yes, most likely. And look at us now. Well, what are we settling for? East Dallas. All right. So he's appealing to his sense of honor, pride. Sometimes that's helpful, even in spiritual life, as we've seen. But why was Prithu Maharaj so advanced? Why was he so advanced? What made him so advanced? Yes, she's listening. He took shelter of his seniors. That's the whole point here. If a personality like you, who are so much advanced because of executing the instructions of previous acharyas, ityadi. This is the point. He's mentioning it in passing, but it's very important, and that's what Prabhupada chooses to dilate on in his purport. We have to follow the parampara, and that's elaborated further in the coming verses. We're only on text 5 now. Ataha kayam imam vidvan avidya kama karmabhi. How many times in the Bhagavatam will we come across this phrase? Avidya kama karmabhi. Very common. Arabdha ite naivasmin pratibuddhonu shajjate. Those who are full in knowledge of the bodily conception of life. Those who are full in knowledge of the bodily conception of life. It doesn't say full in knowledge of the personality of Godhead. We have to become aware of ourselves first. And I don't mean our real self. I mean we have to be conscious of our field of activities. That's why Krishna discusses it in chapter 14, and then goes on to discuss the modes in chapter 13, and then goes on to discuss the modes and other things. It's very important to cultivate what we call sambandha gyan, understanding of our relationship with material nature, our relationship with the Supreme Lord, our relationship with each other. Because unless and until we do that, we can't really get off the ground in terms of spiritual realization. And there's certainly no question of chanting without offense if we don't have sambandha gyan. Where does sambandha gyan come from? This is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. You can't chant without offense, without sambandha gyan. So where does it come from? It comes from Srila Prabhupada's books. We have to take on the austerity of knowledge and open those books and read them. Okay. Those who are in full knowledge of the bodily conception of life, who know that this body is composed of nescience, desires, and activities resulting from illusion, do not become addicted to the body. Thus, every psychologist knows that self-awareness is the first step in therapy. You have to be aware that you've got a problem, or where you stand. Or as Krishna says in 11th canto to Uddhava, Swe adhikare ya nishta saguna parikirtata. A quality is to be aware of what you can do and what you cannot do. Should not settle for less than what you can do. And you should not attempt more than you can actually do. You have to be situated in your own adhikar. And that means you have to understand your field of activities. You have to understand your limitations, and you have to understand the level of faith that you have, etc. All these things are part and parcel of this sambandha gyan. So, asamsaktaha shariresmin amunotpadite grihe apatye dravene vapi kah kuryan mamatam buddha. How can a highly learned person who has absolutely no affinity for the bodily conception of life be affected by the bodily conception in regard to house, children, wealth, and similar other bodily productions? Deha patyakalatradishu. This is what he's saying. Eka shuddha swayam jyotir nirguno sau gunashrayah sarvago navrataha sakshi niratmatmana padaham. The individual soul is one, pure, non-material, and self-effulgent. He is the reservoir of all good qualities, and he is all-pervading. The individual soul, it says. He is without material covering, and he is the witness of all activities. He is completely distinguished from other living entities, and he is transcendental to all embodied souls. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in this verse, Lord Vishnu is describing himself, the Paramatma. He's also an individual, right? Not just us. He's an individual soul. What's the difference between us and him if we're both individual souls? He's better than us. That's really what it comes down to. You have to recognize before you can make any advancement that somebody's better than you. That's a hard pill to swallow, isn't it? We have such a tough false ego, and we don't want to eat that bitter medicine. But we can't make any advancement until we become a little humble. This is the point. So he's the supreme individual soul. Ya evam santamatmanam atmastham veda purushaha nadyate prakritisthopi tadgunaihi samai sthitaha. Although within the material nature, one who is thus situated in full knowledge of the Paramatma and Atma is never affected by the modes of material nature, for he's always situated in my transcendental loving service. And he quotes chapter 14, naturally, Mam Triyo Vabhicharena. I think you know the rest. Yaswadharmena mam nityam nirasihi shraddhayanvitaha bhajate shanakaistasya manorajan prasidati. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, continued, my dear King Prithu, when one is situated in his occupational duty, engages in my loving service without motive for material gain, he gradually becomes very satisfied within. How satisfied? Yenatma suprasidati, completely, or samprasidati, sometimes it's said. He fully satisfied, fully satisfied. We're fully satisfied only by the nectar for which we're always anxious, but we're not always anxious for that nectar because we have jaundice. And that's why we need to eat this kind of medicine as well. It's a little bit like Ayurvedic medicine. It's a super hassle. It takes forever, and half the time it doesn't work. But you still have to do it because it's the only thing that's sure. This verse is also confirmed in the Vishnu Purana. Now that's an interesting point right there. Where in the Vishnu Purana is it confirmed? Anybody know? Very important verse. Often quoted verse also. Varnashrama charavata purushena paraha puman. In that passage of Vishnu Purana, Ardhava Muni was asked by his disciple Sagar Maharaj. Who's Sagar Maharaj? This lady reads Prabhupada's books. Shabash. So Sagar Maharaj asked his guru Ardhava Muni, I'm responsible for all these people. How in the world am I going to bring them to Krishna consciousness? And Sagar Maharaj didn't say, well, you have to adopt their mannerisms, and you have to do things that please them, and you have to provide them with sense gratification, and you have to fit in with the society, and you have to do all these other concoctions that sometimes are suggested. What he said was, Varnashram is the only way to please Lord Vishnu. Now, how do we process this? Varnashrama charavata purushena parapuman. What is the rest of it? Vishnur aryadhyate pungsam nanyat tatosha karanam. There's no other way to please Vishnu, he says. That's a pretty strong statement. Why would he say such a thing when we know savai pungsam paro dharmo? That, just doing this duty alone is shrama eva hi kevalam. Why would he say this? Hridayananda Maharaj very nicely explains this. He said, well, he doesn't know it, but he did. He gives the analogy that when you get on I-30 to go down to Dallas, you can't just get on I-30 directly, right? How do you get onto I-30? There's a feeder ramp. You have to take that road. That's the only way to get on I-30, correct? Nanyat tatosha karanam. Am I clear? So this Varnashram Dharma, it allows us to process Krishna consciousness. And that's why Prabhupada gave 80% of his instructions on this topic in the last 3 years. And that's why he said it was the remaining 50% of his mission, even. Because he saw his disciples can't keep their vows. They're not faithful to their spouses even. The sannyasis, there's so many scandals Prabhupada saw because the people are not situated in their own adhikar. You have to do what you're comfortable doing. And you have to know what you're comfortable doing. And you have to act in that comfort zone, so to speak, under the directions of the Shastras unless and until you become liberated. These things are all stated in our books. So Prabhupada writes here that everyone has an occupational duty, but the purpose of material occupations should not be material gain. This is another thing. That's the best way to ruin the Varnashram system, is try to exploit it for material gain, as is always the case. I mean, this is everyone's first inclination. We're criminals. What do you expect a criminal to do? It's like somebody asked me the other day, can you train monkeys to be productive? Well, if you live in Vrindavan, you very well know the answer to that question. You cannot trust these scuzzy little rascals, ever. The only thing they understand is one thing and one thing alone. What is that? A big fat stick. That they know. That much they know. And this is why we're also instructed, do not ever, ever trust your mind. Never. No matter how liberated you think you are, never trust your mind. This is the point. Always work under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, because he's going to tell you what you need to hear, and maybe that's why we go to Loy Bajar, to find something else instead. Everyone should offer the results of his occupational activities. So here it's said that discharging one's occupational duty as a means of rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of life. Bhagavad Gita confirms this as the process of karma yoga. In other words, we should act only for the satisfaction and service of the Lord. Otherwise, we will be entangled by the resultant actions. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada has given us this instruction, and therefore we regard that instruction, because the best way to chant with offenses is to commit these offenses. How many are there? At least 10. What's one of them? To neglect the instructions of the spiritual master. How about another one? To blaspheme Vedic literature, such as Manu Smriti, for your information. Or to maintain material attachments, in spite of understanding instructions like this one. What kind of material attachments? Well, I'm attached to my Vikarma yoga. Vikarma yoga. No such thing. Okay, so this is what Prabhupada is suggesting here. Parityakta guna samyak darshano vishadasayaha shantim me samavasthanam brahma kaivalyam ashnute. When the heart is cleansed of all material contamination, the devotee's mind becomes broader and transparent, and he can see things equally. At that stage of life, there is peace, and one is situated equally with me as Satchidananda Vigraha. That equality, Srila Prabhupada is very careful to point out in his purport, is not the same thing as the Mayavad conception of absolute equality. For the Vaishnavas, Kaivalya, not for the Vaishnavas, for most of those who interpret Vedanta, everyone except for Shankar agrees on one thing. Kaivalya means to be in union with the Lord's interest. To not have your own program separate from the Lord. This is what real Kaivalya means. I was in Tiruchendur, famous Shaiva place in South India, and home of the second biggest shrine to Murugan, Lord Shiva's son, in India. Famous place. And I was staying in the neighborhood of all the pujaris, and so we did a program there. It was all pujaris, families coming. They're all worshippers of Skanda. Nobody would ask, but one little girl raised her hand and said, well, tell me, is Krishna God or is Murugan God? What would you say? I told her, you go in the temple to Murugan, you pray like you've never prayed before for guidance and direction, that who is the absolute truth? Not what is the absolute truth, who is the absolute truth? And just see what happens. Totally non-sectarian answer, correct? I'm not pushing anything on anyone. I don't know if she followed the advice or not, but many, many, many devotees I know who have come to ISKCON by this process, by the grace of demigods. Hardcore worshippers of Devi and Lord Shiva and whatever it is. Our Nityananda is one of them, right? So, anyway, this is the point that we're not Mayavadis, but we do aspire for oneness with the Lord, but that oneness is one of interest. Oneness of interest means, I explained further to this little girl that these demigods are not fighting each other. They're all on the same page. They're all trying to do the same thing to help us all. They're all trying to reestablish Dharma, same thing Krishna comes for, same thing Lord Shiva, everybody. There's no real conflict here. But foolish worshippers who can't see anything straight because they try to understand only a little bit and mainly nourish their bodily misconceptions of life, these people cause problems. And this is what we have to watch out for, and this is why we have to very carefully assimilate everything that Srila Prabhupada is teaching us in his books. Because it's not that easy to do, actually. It's really not that easy. So, all right, we have to move on. Udasinam ivadhyaksham dravyajnana kriyatmanam gurastham imam atmanam yovedapnoti shobhanam. Anyone who knows this material body made of 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul. Anyone who knows that this material body made of 5 gross elements, the sense organs, the working senses, and the mind, is simply supervised by the fixed soul, is eligible to be liberated from material bondage. Prabhupada says here, the first point is that one must know that the soul is different from his body. We are so wrapped up in conceptions of ourselves that are actually mixed with one of these 16 other things that we don't consider. We just assume erroneously that, who I understand to be myself, that's who's incarnating life after life. My friend, it's not so. What you have a factory reset at the time of death. Everything is erased. And you've got nothing left, even in your subtle body, except for your samskars. You don't know who you are. Don't know where you came from, where you're going, what you even want. We don't know anything. This is the precarious situation of being abodhajata, born as a biologically correct human being, but thoroughly ignorant of the knowledge that characterizes genuine human life. This is our problem, and this we have to undo. Krishna says he can undo it just by slashing with a sword of knowledge. We heard the other day at Sadhu Sangha retreat, yad anudhyasina yuktaha, with the sword of, remembrance of the personality of Godhead. All right, so here Prabhupada is, Maitreya Muni, Lord Vishnu, is enumerating the Sankhya philosophy, which we really have to know. We can't begin to understand, why do the Dharma Shastras tell us to do so many persnickety little things? We can't begin to understand that until we understand how material nature works in terms of Sankhya principles. It's very important. That's why it's in the Bhagavad Gita. That's why it's also in the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a whole school of philosophers who are dedicated to understanding Sankhya. And unfortunately, because it's Kali Yuga, too many of them have become off track. But real Sankhya is taught here in the Bhagavatam, and it's very important, and it's preliminary also. So this is only being hinted here. It's not explicit in these verses or purports, but it is very important. Bhinnasya lingasya guna pravaho dravya kriya karaka chetanatmanaha drishtasu sampatsu vipatsu suryaha na vikriyante mai baddhasu hridaha sauhridaha. Lord Vishnu told King Prithu, my dear king, the constant change of this material world is due to the interactions of the three modes of material nature. They never stop moving around. You can't wait for your Krishna consciousness for a stable situation because it's never going to be there. You got to do it now, and you have to swim against the current, and it's tough, but this is human life. While we can, we have to take advantage of it. I always give this analogy, like an elevator door. When the elevator door opens up, what do? You don't have to get out of the elevator, right? You can choose to stay in the elevator if you want, but generally it's understood. We've got business to do. So, anyway, and it's also understood that we only have a limited time to act when the door opens. That door is like this human form of life. And we have to strategize, and we have to use our time wisely while we can. Because once that door shuts, you're going somewhere else. And if you didn't push the right button, you're going to whatever button somebody else pushed. That's like the modes of nature. Okay. The five elements, the senses, the demigods who control the senses, this is something we don't even consider, isn't it? We don't even know who's controlling our senses, do we? Why not? It's in the Bhagavatam, but we don't have the patience to study the second canto or the third canto. We don't have the patience. Who's in charge of your eyesight? Anybody with glasses? Oh, we know that much. Very good. He is the presiding deity of the eyesight. I mean, actually, the real presiding deity of everything is Krishna. That's why we have this Gopala Kavacham. What is that? My wife went to the dentist recently. So I was praying, Janardana hapatu dantan. My dear Janardhan, please protect her teeth. Kavacha means, all these things we try to protect. All right, well, anyway, there are demigods who control our senses. This is discussed in second canto. Which chapter? Let's see how sharp you are. Try chapter 10. And demigods controlling the mind, which is agitated by the spirit soul. All these taken together comprise the body. We have to know these things. Since the spirit soul is completely different from this constitution of gross or subtle material elements, my devotee who is connected with me in intense friendship and affection, being completely in knowledge, is never agitated by material happiness and distress. Krishna is trying to elevate us, Lord Vishnu. I mean, Prithu is already elevated, as Prabhupada said, but Lord Vishnu is showing that what we need to be concerned with here. I'm putting everything together in a big bag that we're calling Sambandha Gyan. But these are its components, and every one of them is very, very important. So, let's go on. Samah samanottama madhyamathamah sukhe cha dukhe cha jitendriyashayah mayopakraptakhila loka sanyuto vidhatsvarirākula loka rakshanam. My dear heroic king, please keep yourself always equipoised and treat people equally, whether they're greater than you, in the intermediate stage, or lower than you. Does that mean that we give equal respect to everyone in an absolute Mayavad sense? No. Why do we know this? How do we know this? What does it say? Yes, that's one reference. Anything else? Look in the Bhagavatam. When Krishna comes into Dwarka, how does he reciprocate with all the different citizens? If they're elder, he touches their feet. Krishna. Why is he doing that? just to set an example for us. Shakale shaman korite shakti dehonata jatajata. What does it mean? Yes, I'm giving equal respect to everyone, but not in the same way. Everybody gets his own way of respect, correct? With the juniors, you respect them in one way, and with the friends you respect in a different way. With superiors, you respect in another way. It is equality. It is equality. Just like Varnashram Dharma. People nowadays, especially in America nowadays, it's become, so Marxist. But so people hate stratified society. The whole notion of a stratified society is just completely repulsive to the modern American mindset. But actually the Varnashram system preaches only equality. Because everybody has to do their dharma. They don't all do the same dharma. They have their own dharma. That's called swadharma. It's custom tailored to every individual. It's not absolute Mayavad equality, but it is equality because everybody has to do it. Everybody, except for the liberated souls. All right, anyway. Do not be disturbed by temporary distress or happiness. Fully control your mind and senses in this transcendental position. Try to execute your duty as king in whatever condition of life you may be posted by my arrangement. For your only duty here is to give protection to the citizens of your kingdom. Lord Vishnu is instructing Prithu Maharaj, his own incarnation, Shakti Avesh incarnation, what he has to do. And what is he instructing him to do? He's instructing him to do the same thing that Krishna instructed Arjuna to do. Yes, it's devotional service. It is definitely Parodharma, but it is also Varnashram Dharma. Arjuna has to fight. At the end of Bhagavad Gita, everybody will agree. Is he not going to fight? No, he's going to fight. Similarly here, Krishna, Lord Vishnu, is instructing Prithu Maharaj, what I want you to do is to be a president, to be a king, and to execute those duties which are pre-existing. You don't have to invent any reals. Everything is already there. You just have to do it. You have to surrender to it. It takes surrender. And it's hard work. That's what purifies us. Otherwise, why does Krishna say twice in Bhagavad Gita, Yajña dana tapaschaiva pavanani manishanaha? Even the great souls are purified by these three things: sacrifice, charity, austerity. Performance of your duty will always involve these things. That's how it purifies us. If we don't do our duty and we call ourselves spiritually advanced, that you can get away with among fools. And most people are fools, so it's easy. But that's another matter. If you want to actually make spiritual advancement, you have to do the hard work, not just leap philosophy. You know what leap philosophy is? Textbook example of a leap philosophy, according to my logic teacher, Karl Potter. He says you just imagine yourself to be in some alternative reality, and that's enough. You just imagine that it's all one. It's not all one, my friend. If I give you, ice cream on a freezing cold day, it's not so appreciable, right? Unless, you're Tamil. Tamils will eat yogurt rice even on the North Pole in January. But anyway. Okay, so this is the point. He's instructing him, you have to do your duty. The Lord helps us by giving us directions how to act in devotional service. And so has Srila Prabhupada. You please implement Varnashram Dharma within ISKCON. In the beginning, my godbrother Sureshwar Prabhu and Hare Krishna Dasi, they put together a book of quotes from Srila Prabhupada on this topic, and they assumed in the beginning that this is meant for the people who can't take to Krishna consciousness directly. You just let them do something that's pious, and then maybe later they could get enough piety to come to Krishna consciousness. He said they were shocked to discover, upon collating all of Prabhupada's quotes, that most of these instructions are directed squarely at us. his initiated disciples. And he wanted it done in ISKCON. And by that example to teach the others, because sayat pramanam kurate, like it or not, you are providing the praman for people in the future to act. And if you do the wrong thing, you get the karma for misleading people. It's serious business. And there's a limited time that we can get our act together as well. 50 years is a long time to neglect the order of the spiritual master. All right, so one should treat the spiritual master as the supreme personality of Godhead and never be envious of him or consider him to be an ordinary human being. If we follow the instruction of the spiritual master and execute devotional service to the Lord, we will remain always free from the contamination of bodily and material activities, and our life will be successful. Text 14 is even stronger. Are you listening? Shreya prajapalanameva rajño yat sampadayeshu sukritat sashtamangsham harthanya thrita punya prajanam. Wow. Arakshita, sorry, I can't read. Garaharo aghamati, to give protection to the general mass of people who are citizens of the state is the prescribed occupational duty for a king. By acting in that way, the king in his next life shares 1/6 of the result of the pious activities of the citizens. But a king or executive head of state who simply collects taxes from the citizens but does not give them proper protection as human beings has the results of his own pious activities taken away by the citizens. In exchange for his not giving protection, he becomes liable to punishment for the impious activities of his subjects. The word here is used. Hrita punya. His punya is all stolen by the prajas. The question may be raised here that if everyone engaged in spiritual activities to attain salvation, if everyone engaged in spiritual activities to attain salvation and became indifferent to the activities of the material world, then how could things as they are go on? Have you heard this before? Yeah, if everybody becomes like you, then how things are? This is a common doubt people have. The division, and if things are to go on as they ought to, how can a head of state be indifferent to such activities? In answer to this question, the word shreya, auspicious, is used here. The division of activities in society is arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Was not blindly or accidentally created as foolish people say. It's not an anthropological phenomenon. It's the system arranged by God. We're so contaminated with these mundane concepts that are nourished by the Chinese Communist Party and other actors, bad actors, that we have a hard time to see this. But the division of activities in society, as arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was not blindly or accidentally created, as foolish people say. The Brahmanas must do his duty properly, and the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, and even the Shudras must do the same. And every one of them can achieve the highest perfection of life, liberation from this material bondage. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 45. Who knows it? Sway. Karmanya, you're looking at the board, I think. Yeah, and it means the same thing that Prabhupada has just said. So Lord Vishnu advised Maharaj Prithu that a king is not enjoined to give up his kingdom and the responsibility of protecting the prajas, to instead go away to the Himalayas for liberation. Neither is he instructed here to invent something that's custom tailored to the time, place, and circumstance. Note this. That's not what Vishnu tells him to do. Instead, Vishnu tells him there is an eternal system already in place. It's already perfect. It always works, and it's coming from me. And you can't neglect it. This is the point. Very important for us to take note of. And we can repeat here, as it's already been noted, that the reason that Maharaj Prithu was empowered by the Lord to become the Shakti Avesh avatar that he is because he was submissive to hearing these things. From whom? From the previous acharyas, from his superiors. This is the point. Very important one. So, Lord Vishnu advised him not to go to Himalayas, etc. The royal duty of the head of state is to see that the prajas, or the general mass of people, are doing their respective duties for spiritual salvation. People, and there's a wonderful quote, I don't remember where it is, but Prabhupada was saying that governments now, people have no idea, and the government leaders themselves have no idea of the vast scope of their own responsibility. They have no idea what they're culpable for. They have no idea. Nate vidu svarthagatim hi Vishnu. So, a secular state does not necessitate a king or head of state who is indifferent to the activities of the prajas. In the modern state, the government has many rules and regulations for conducting the duties of the prajas, but the government neglects to see that the citizens advance in spiritual knowledge. If the government is careless in this matter, the citizens will act whimsically without any sense of God realization or spiritual life, and thus become entangled in sinful activities. The king's real duty is to see that the citizens gradually become fully Krishna conscious. Krishna conscious means completely free from all sinful activities. We heard that the other day. As soon as there is complete eradication of sinful activities in the state, there will be no more war, pestilence, famine, or natural disturbances. Don't believe it? You have to try it. Otherwise, you have no position to argue. This was actually prevailing during the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira. If a king or head of the government is able to induce the citizens to become Krishna conscious, then he is worthy to rule over the mass of people. Otherwise, he has no right to levy taxes. And this is what we see nowadays. Okay, this same principle can be applied to parents and spiritual masters as well. If parents simply give birth to children like cats and dogs, but cannot save their children from imminent death, they become responsible for the activities of their animalistic children. Wow. Animalistic children. Hi. Lately, such children are turning into hippies. Similarly, if a spiritual master cannot direct his disciples to become free from sinful activities, he becomes responsible for their sinful acts. These subtle laws of nature are unknown to the present leaders of society. Since the leaders of society have a poor fund of knowledge, and the citizens in general are rogues and thieves, there cannot be an auspicious situation for human society at the present moment. Excuse me. The whole world is full of such an incompatible combination of state and citizens, and therefore there's constant tension, war, and anxiety as an inevitable result of such social conditions. Evam dvijagryamanu matanu vritta dharma pradano anyatamo vitasyaha prasvena kalena grahopayatan trashtasi siddhan anurakta lokaha. Lord Vishnu continued, my dear King Prithu, if you continue to protect the citizens according to the instructions of the learned Brahmana authorities, as they are received by the disciplic succession, by hearing from master to disciple, and if you follow the religious principles laid down by them, not by us, by them, without attachment to ideas manufactured by mental concoction, then every one of your citizens will be happy and will love you. And very soon you will be able to see such already liberated personalities as the four Kumaras, Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandan, and Sanat Kumara. You might recall, all these august personalities were in this sacrifice. This verse suggests that Maharaj Prithu was not able to see them, because after all, he was taking the part of a mortal king. Purport. Lord Vishnu advised King Prithu that everyone should follow the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Then, in whatever capacity one remains in this material world, his salvation is guaranteed after death. In this age, however, since the system of Varnashram Dharma is topsy-turvy, it is very difficult to strictly follow all the principles. The only method for becoming perfect in life is developed Krishna consciousness, as Varnashram Dharma is executed from different positions by different men, so the Krishna consciousness principles can be followed by everyone in every part of the world. The great sages have already given us instructions on how to live according to the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Similarly, Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami have given us rules and regulations for becoming pure devotees of the Lord. It is essential, therefore, to follow the instructions of the Acharyas in the Parampara system who have received the knowledge and passed down from spiritual master to disciple. In this way, although living in our material condition of life, we can get out of the entanglement of material contamination without leaving our positions. This is something Lord Chaitanya also said, sthane sthita, stay in your position, but become Krishna conscious. In the modern age of democracy, there are so many government representatives voting for legislation every day. They bring out a new law. But because these laws are only mental concoctions manufactured by inexperienced, conditioned souls, they cannot give relief to human society. Formerly, although the kings were autocrats, they strictly followed the principles laid down by great sages and saintly persons. There were no mistakes in ruling over the country, and everything went perfectly. Are you seeing a pattern here? We have to follow. This is the thing. One of my godbrothers, one day some GBC, I think the GBC was on his case for something. I don't remember what it was now, but he just folded his hands and said that, whatever you say, just, you can enact any legislation you like, but please follow it. So, that's another topic perhaps, but here we're all disciples, we're all followers of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. We have that name to uphold, the honor of that name to uphold. We cannot be hypocrites, and it is hypocritical to ignore the direct instructions that we've received, especially if he says it's the remaining 50% of his mission. Very, very important thing. Nowadays, at least people are talking about it. That's something. Now, I'd like to share with you a wonderful purport from Chapter 3, Text 31, which you may have heard before. You should have heard it before, but it always bears repeating. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, as the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. There are so many philosophers who write comments on Bhagavad Gita, but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruit of action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord. But because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. Isn't that encouraging? Sometimes people raise their doubts that, we find that even here in the passage that we've read now so far, that in some places it seems that Prabhupada is saying you cannot strictly follow Varnashram in the Kali Yuga. And in other places we hear that Prabhupada is urging us, as I mentioned already, it's squarely directed at us, these instructions, that you must implement Varnashram now. How to reconcile? First point is this: you do have to reconcile. Philosophically, this is important consideration. It's called mimamsa. That when you have an apparent contradiction, and they're coming from equally valid authorities, you have to find a way to reconcile that contradiction with reference to those authorities. Otherwise, it's going to be half-hand logic. Artha kutinaya, right? You want the hen that lays eggs, but you don't want the hen that you have to feed. You see? So we have to reconcile when we see an apparent contradiction in our philosophy, and there is a system pre-existing for that reconciliation, for that resolution. As I said, it's called mimamsa. It's a very technical, difficult philosophical process, but it's there, and it's coming down in parampara. And the principle, though, is very simple, that we have to follow both injunctions at the same time. Now, how do we do that with regard to this particular question of Varnashram? Because sometimes Prabhupada said it's not possible, and sometimes Prabhupada said, do it. How do we reconcile that? Who has some sagacious answer about this? Anyone? No one's given any thought to this. Dharma. His name is Dharma, by the way. Yeah, we have to rely on the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master. Yes. What else? Yes, this is another problem. We have some bogus gurus here, don't we? It's a fact. I'm not going to lie. Everybody knows it. So there are some good ones, there are some bad ones. That's a problem. As Rupa Goswami said, this is why, if you want stability in society,